get you caught up to where we're at. And by charity for all, when Lincoln is saying that, he's not meaning charity like we think of today, where it's a handout, it's giving people stuff. Sometimes that's appropriate, sometimes it's not. But he's using the old school version of the word charity, which means love. And so when Lincoln says charity for all, he's saying love your fellows together. You got to remember that's the Civil War. In that audience are former slaves, and then there are also former slave owners in that group. And he said, I'm going to love both of those sort of people. He's got Andrew Johnson, who was his vice president, who was very, very, very drunk, was already being considered for impeachment, which eventually they vote no on that. But he's ready to be impeached already. It's inauguration day when Lincoln says this. And they're already moving in that direction. He's got his favorite man probably in the world, John Wilkes Booth, sitting out there in the audience. When he's saying charity for all, so when he's saying charity for all, he's saying, I'm going to love everybody. That is the challenge that he's putting out to the nation. Wouldn't it be great to have another opportunity like that, to have that conversation? Well, we can become the people who want to do that. And so that's what the purpose of the book, kind of the concept of the book is. How do we love kind of people on the extremes, people who are maybe evil? How do we love people who are challenging? How do we? It's some of it. Well, we're going to start off with some of those challenging things, but in everyday life, we just need to understand that it's easy for me to love my granddaughters. And they come running in. They're 5, 4, 3, and almost 1. And they come running. The 3 come running in. The other one doesn't run in yet, but the other 3 are running in. They come and hug you. That's pretty easy. There's not a challenge. All that. I don't have to think about loving them. It's an automatic. But when somebody's cussing you out, cursing you, and in Jesus' case, hanging you on the cross, that's a pretty serious opportunity there to love your enemies, to love those who oppose you. And so the whole purpose of this book is to kind of talk about how we do that. And we're going to looking at, in the book of Matthew, all the different connections Jesus made. And we're going to work through all the different people Jesus demonstrated love to. And the first person that we see that he demonstrated love to was himself. That sounds selfish, but I want to read a little bit about this. In Matthew chapter 4 is where we're going to start. So if you have a Bible, you can take a look at Matthew chapter 4. But the truth is that you cannot naturally love your enemies. You cannot naturally do it. It's not an automatic. You have got to train and teach yourself to do it. And Jesus, though he was God, took on flesh. He has all the emotions, all the hurt, all the anger that anybody else would have. You got to remember, at one point, his parents lost him for 3 days in a big city. What would you feel like if you were a child, and in this case he's probably about 12 years old, so maybe he felt pretty good about it, but his parents didn't even know he was gone for 3 days. So he has some of this stuff in his background to say, you know what, maybe I felt rejected. Got dismissed. He had that. He could have felt that way. And we know he didn't really do anything negative with that, but he could have felt that way. But he still chose to love. So he's got the flesh he's got to deal with. So if you're going to love your enemy, if you're going to love well, have love for everybody, then that means you have to train yourself first. And so Jesus does that. And so he gets baptized, and then in Matthew chapter 4, this takes place. It says, Then Jesus was led up by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. And after fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. And the tempter came and said to him, If you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread. But he answered, It is written, Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. Then the devil took him to the holy city and set him on the pinnacle of the temple and said to him, If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, He will command his angels concerning you. And on their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone. That's from Psalm 91. Jesus said to him again, It is written, You shall not put the Lord your God to the test. Again the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he said to him, All these I will give you, if you fall down and worship me. Then Jesus said to him, Be gone, for it is written, You shall worship the Lord your God, and him only shall you serve. Then the devil left him, and behold, angels came and were ministering to him. So in order for Jesus to be able to love well, he needs to love himself first. We think we're loving ourselves when we're meeting our initial feelings, the things that come at us. So he's hungry. So I'm going to show myself love by feeding myself. 40 days without eating. Anybody else be hungry? Yeah. It's pretty obvious. This is a normal, everyday response. He's going to be hungry. He's also been living in the desert. So it's been dirty, nasty. He hasn't showered. He's out there living this life in the wilderness. The devil comes and tempts him. Understand, this is why he went into the desert. To have himself shaped, to bring his flesh under control. Later on, Paul would say, I beat my body to make it subservient so that way I can follow the kingdom of God. And Jesus is demonstrating what that looks like. I am beating my body. I'm putting myself in a place to shape it so I can love abundantly. So first thing, take care of the flesh. That's the first temptation. I'm going to take care of the flesh. The next one is fame. I want everybody to know me. I'm going to jump off this tower and land on my feet. I'll be a celebrity. If he did that, obviously people are going to give him donations. He can come go on a show every day of the week. Look at me jumping off the tower. Yay, me, and I landed. He could have done that. But he said, no, I'm not going to take care of myself through temporary anything. In the Roman Empire, when a general came home to Rome, he would be riding this big parade, celebrating, bringing all the captives before him, doing all those things. And everybody's cheering for him. They're throwing flowers at him. They think he's really great. And he's got a guy behind him saying, remember, it's temporary. All fame is fleeting. So what Jesus is demonstrating for us in this section is he takes care of himself, is I'm not going to take temporary pleasure. It's not about the temporary. I want the Father's happiness in my life. So I'm going to choose to do that. And then the third one he gets hit up was power. So I can take care of myself, I can have fame, but also there's this power. I can be the king of everything. I'm going to feel really happy, and I can take care of everything. I can tell somebody to do this or that, and that's going to fix all my problems. Jesus again says the power isn't what it's all about. It's following the Father's will. He's training himself to do that. So before we go on, the question is, how can we, as ordinary people, train ourselves to be able to do that? In this case, Jesus takes 40 days, all by himself.
Searching yourself, finding the one you have to do for yourself, or you can take care of anybody else.
Yeah. Do an examination. Figure out what your triggers are. Like, understand what's causing you to do these things. That's what self-evaluation is all about, so you can understand yourself. Now, I can do those for you all day long, but it's not going to be helpful. You know your heart, and you examine your heart. It may take you a while to get there, but you can do that. So yeah, you got to take the time to examine yourself. What else can we do?
I feel like in reading, there's one thing that I've been lacking to do. I know prayer.
Obviously, prayer.
Lord does definitely like for you to talk to him a lot. But I feel like what I've lacked a lot.
Do you need me to hold it?
Nope.
And so reading good stuff. I'm not gonna say any particular thing is necessarily bad, but anything that's kind of pornographic or something, you don't want to be reading that. Anything that's particularly violent, don't need to be reading that. You want to feed your soul. So I'm going to read something that's going to feed my soul in some positive sort of way. But also reading the Bible. Jesus fights back with using the Bible. So we got to memorize some scripture. That changes your heart and your thinking just by memorizing short verses. So the verse of the week here at the mission, you can actually win prizes if you memorize the verse of the week. Ryan did it this week. Anybody who wants to do it, you come by and say, hey, I know the verse of the week that's on the schedules, and you say that. But it's starting to train your mind. You start to change when you do that. So scripture, Jesus fights back with other verses. And the interesting thing is, those are all verses from the book of Leviticus. Now, most of us don't get excited about the book of Leviticus. It's not like a page turner. It's a challenging part, but he quotes 3 places from it. And as a Jewish young man, he probably would have memorized most of the first 5 books of the Bible. That was a common practice and still is a common practice. So you don't have to memorize all first 5 books of the Bible, but memorizing the scripture. Other things we can do to be training ourselves.
Study.
Take time to study.
Get hungry.
Get hungry for spiritual things.
Yes, sir.
Meditation.
Yeah.
Meditation. Meditate on the Word of God. Meditate on the good things, positive things. We have a thought cycle, and it's something that if we get in a negative thought cycle, we keep going down that spiral. We need to fix that spiral. The best way to fix the spiral is by thinking of something positive. How can I help somebody? How can I be a blessing?
Fast, but not publicly, and not as long as Jesus did, of course.
Well, I have a friend who actually did a 40-day, actually he ended up doing a 44-day fast.
Wow.
And it was very private. Only his best friends and some of his family knew. He went out in the woods and he camped out during that whole time. And the whole time he's reading his Bible and journaling and seeing what God would say to him. He did it actually twice before I left. He might have done it more since. But fasting is a very powerful tool. You don't need to go public with it. When you're in a family, when I fast, I tell my wife no. Like, hey, by the way, I'll come sit with you at dinner, but I'm not going to be eating, and this is why. Otherwise, she might get offended. But like, oh, you don't like my cooking, huh? I don't want it to be that. But yeah, fasting, it's a lost art.
Be sober-minded.
Be sober-minded. Yeah, you gotta. If your mind's all cloudy, you can't think clearly.
It's true.
I'll put this verse in the back of my head. It's like you can't drink from the cup of God and the cup of demons at the same time.
Yeah, the letter of James, he talks about that. You can't
You gotta
mix bitter water, salt water with fresh water. It doesn't work out. And what actually happens if I mix salt water with fresh water? It's still salty. The fresh water never overrides the salty. So I got to get rid of all the salty.
It's called brackish water.
Yeah. Brackish water is slightly different, but it's like stale water. There's no life in it, but it's a little different than salt water, but it's similar. All right, so Jesus is showing us that we've got to take care of ourselves. We have to do this first, and it has to be work that you're doing while you're feeling okay. When the emergency crisis comes and somebody challenges you to love them, you can't say, oh, now I'm going to start preparing. Because by then it's too late. You're already reacting to things. Jesus chose not to do that. The other thing that Jesus does that's really important is that he accepts the help of the angels. The last verse here is really important, and this is one verse you might just run right past it. As behold, angels came and were ministering to him. It was not easy. We tend to think, well, everything was easy for Jesus. He was still in the flesh. He was a human being. He had all the same temptations every single one of us have. So every time you have a temptation, say, well, Jesus had something kind of like that. And I experienced all that. It was exhausting. Every time he had to say no to the devil, and these are just the three we're told about. There might have been more in the battle. But Jesus, I am going to hold steady here. I'm going to hold on to all this. But then when he's tired, he lets the angels minister to him. He lets others minister to him. Later on in his ministry, he has women who come and they pay the bills and they're ministering to him. The apostles serve him in different capacities. He accepts help from outside. What keeps us from getting help from outside? Our pride. Our pride is probably our number one. There's a lot of other reasons, but pride. I don't want anybody to think I'm weak. Don't want anybody to think I'm challenged or having difficulty. So yeah, pride gets in the way. Other things that keep us from asking for help. Fear. Yeah, we might lose our job. Might lose a friendship. Might lose our marriage or whatever other relationships we might have. We might get arrested. I have a friend a long time ago was contemplating suicide and fortunately made a call to his wife who got him the help, and so a lot of other people came around and got him some professional help. But he was embarrassed. Now he's got to go back to work after being in an institution for a period of time. He's got to go back to work and say, why'd you miss work? He's got to answer that. That was kind of embarrassing for him, kind of challenging for him. I'm glad he did it. I mean, he wouldn't be with us now if he had it. But it was very embarrassing for him to go public with some of that. So, fear of what people are going to think. What else keeps us from having the right people around us?
Bad habit.
It's a bad habit. We keep going to what we know. I got another friend who he dated the same girl for 8 years. 4 years of high school, 4 years of college. And they fought like nobody's business. I've never seen a couple fight more and still end up getting married. It was knock down, drag out all the time. But he married her because he was used to her. He goes, I know the devil. I know this devil. I don't know the other devils. It's like, well, they ended up not making it. And I kind of suspected. You don't tell your friend, hey, by the way, it's going to fall apart. But he just married because he knew her. And we do the same thing. We go to the same people all the time. And we think that they're going to help us, so they never have helped us before. We go with what we're comfortable with. Other reasons we don't go to people.
Being introvert, not wanting to be around people.
Oh, that's a whole other can of worms there. Some of us are introverts. We like to stay with ourselves. I prefer to be by myself most of the time. But yeah, we don't want anybody to know about it. Got to keep aside. But even introverts, they need 1 or 2 people. You're just gonna be a little bit more picky about who you pick.
Lack of trust.
Lack of trust. You're hitting on one of the big things. Who do we trust? I'm gonna tell you my deepest, darkest secrets. How do I know you're not gonna go to social media and say, hey, by the way, Rich is this. Rich is struggling with this or that. How do I know that's not gonna happen? I don't. And there's people who love to tear me down. So, we all feel that way. It's not just about Rich. But yeah, trust. How do you figure out who to trust? So that's the new question. How do we figure out who to trust? I mean, Jesus could trust the angels. He has some relationship with them. He could trust them. Examine them too. Check out their life. We joke. We've been doing a Bible study called Experiencing God. And this last section, we just finished it up as the leaders of the mission. We were studying this, and there's 2 chapters there. There's one on marriage and children. 2 studies on it. And so we looked at one of the staff members who has no wife and no children. He said, "Well, what are your thoughts on it?" Well, he can't give us good advice on marriage or children. So to find somebody we trust, we got to figure out somebody who's had our problems, our same challenges. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to advise us. Somebody who's never been married cannot really give good marriage advice. Somebody who's never had children. I thought I knew all about child rearing until I had my own. I was a child rearing expert until I had my 3. And even though I've raised all 3 of mine, they're adults doing great things, I really still don't know how we pulled it off. It was kind of a day-to-day deal. But you got to find people you trust. And how we're going to do that? We're going to examine them. Find out what they know. Find out what their heart is. Find out what they're doing things. I'm not going to take marriage advice for someone who's been married, like, what was that actress's name who got married like 9 times?
So many of them.
Elizabeth Taylor, that's what I was thinking of. 1 or 2 divorces, they might have learned a thing or 2 that might be helpful, but 9 probably not figured it out. Learn a bunch. So you get off marriage, but anything else? Any other things that we might do to try to figure out the best way to find people to trust?
Unforgiveness. People not forgiveness.
It gets hard to, we got to be able to forgive. So we got to wrap around, we got to be able to forgive and working through those challenges of that.
No, I feel like trust is earned because, it's just really hard. People have been hurt so many times. You can't just give it sometimes.
And forgiveness is a whole nother challenge that we have to choose to forgive. God will not hear us unless we're choosing to forgive. However, that may or may not be a safe time to call them and say, hey, by the way, I forgive you. Because they may not be in a position to hear that yet, but you in your own heart have to do it. You have to go through the work and actually go through that process. And if it is safe and if it is possible, you may have to actually go do it. Sometimes it's a handwritten letter. Sometimes it's a phone call. I still don't like text for that sort of thing. It gets very misunderstood. But working through that forgiveness is a big challenge when you're trying to get somebody to minister to you.
Yeah, but forgiveness, you can earn that. You can give that to people, but they still have to earn your trust.
Yeah, earn the trust back. The trust but verify.
You can forgive, but they don't have to be a part of your life.
That's very true. You may choose to say this person is not going to be part of my life, and there's good reasons possibly for that.
That's like you can love your family, but you don't necessarily have to like them at the moment.
It's very true. Family could be a challenge. All right, so Jesus gets ministered to by the angels. Who are the people who are most likely to be able to help us? Jesus had the angels. He's in the desert by himself. There's not other people around to be able to help out.
Somebody who's been in our situation are those who are stronger in the Lord.
Somebody who's stronger in the Lord. You're going to want somebody who's strong. Somebody else who's struggling. Hurt draws the hurt. So we tend to surround ourselves with other people who are hurting in the same way we are. And the truth is, there is a benefit there. There is, there's a verse that talks about, a band of 3 strands is not easily broken. So there's this 2 walking together, they can fight off an enemy, and all those sort of things. Doing this together makes you stronger. But there's a bigger piece of, I need somebody who's stronger and better than me to help me get through the challenge. And there's always somebody stronger, smarter, more spiritual that can help us out. None of us are at a high level that can pull it off. What are other things that we can do?
Love. Yeah,
And there's a song that says, if I do not, have love in me, I cannot be charitable.
Yeah, we need to have love. And we need to, we're building that. That's what we're doing right now, is we're figuring out in those challenging times how we build that love and do all that.
It's hard.
So let me illustrate this with a story, and then we can be done unless you have other comments about Jesus ministering to himself. It is not selfish to take care of himself. I want to highlight that one more time. When you go on an airplane and a little oxygen mask drops down, they tell you put it on yourself first and then somebody else. Otherwise, you're going to pass out and be no good to anybody else. So you take care of yourself first. That's not selfishness in that. So when I first became a Christian, and I had my last job I ever did as a deckhand on a riverboat. I used to run the Mississippi River on riverboats, and it was a great job. I loved everything. My last job was actually on a casino boat. That was a cush job. We would walk through, and our job was safety and security. That's what we did. And so I'd walk through, and we watch it for somebody who had thrown their cigarette butts into the trash can and lit a fire, and I'd put out the fire. We do drills practicing man overboard. Actually, only had one time somebody actually went overboard. And we did all the drill. We did everything we ever trained for. We were ready for this. The most exciting day of work we ever had, because usually we're bored. And so somebody's overboard, like, yes, we're going to rescue them. We're doing all this, and we take the boat all around. And when we do the drills, you're pulling out a life jacket. It's, the life jacket isn't fighting you. But in real life, when somebody's overboard, they are fighting you every step of the way. And so we get to them, and we're fighting them, and eventually somebody kind of yells out from because they're so close to the shore, they said, hey, stand up. And the guy stood up. We didn't even have to really rescue him. But we did all the drills, everything we were supposed to. But I love this job because mostly I'd walk around and just, we sat around and all my friends, we sat around all day, all winter long. When we weren't cruising, we sat down in this little room together for an hour because there's an hour between cruises. So we just sat there, watched TV. I probably saw a dozen movies per shift. I mean, it was just a great job as far as not having to do too much. But while working there, I became a Christian. And all of a sudden, I thought, well, what am I going to do now? I would sit down with those same guys, and these guys were my friends before coming to Christ. But all of a sudden, I'm not feeling comfortable with them anymore. The movies they were watching, not so comfortable with those movies anymore. And so I began to say, well, God, what should I do? Because I'm new to this. I don't know how to, I've never really prayed that much. I've never read the Bible that much. I got a new Bible that I got, and I could carry it in my pocket. I got a pocket-sized Bible, and I was pretty excited about having that. And I'm looking around going, what do I do? And well, there's one job that you had to do, whether the ship was moving or not, that was required, that somebody always had to be there. And nobody loved that job. And it was, you had to crawl through this little door, and you go out to the front of the boat, and you're watching for, when there's floods, you have to watch for houses and trees, so that way the captain could steer away from debris coming down the river. It can be very stressful, very tiring. But I said, you know what, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stay away from these guys who are a bad influence. They're going to kind of corrupt my thinking. The talk was vulgar. The movies were vulgar. Their hopes and dreams for their life were vulgar. The things they wanted to do to other people's staff working on the boat, not of God. I got to get away. I got to do something different. But still, these are my friends. I got to figure out how to witness to them. But in that room, it wasn't going to happen. So I volunteered for this job. And I made a lot of friends by taking that job. They all said, well, Rich is going to do it. I don't have to do it. And the beauty was that between cruises, where we're not doing, I could just look up once in a while. You could look up the river. I could see there's no debris. I could read my Bible. So I'm in the middle of a casino boat with people who are refusing to get up from slot machines because they're going to the bathroom on themselves. So they go to the bathroom on themselves, so they don't want to get up. They're afraid that it's going to hit as soon as they walk out. So they're afraid to get up and go to the bathroom, so they go to the bathroom on themselves. There's people who throw violent fits. One guy, I'm not going to use his name. I know his name, but I'm not going to throw it out here just in case he ended up watching, because it would be cool if he did. But he was one of the wealthier people in the community, and he had a business about 3 blocks from the riverboat. And he would come in between cruises, and he would gamble at $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 per shot. Now, one day he lost $30,000, and he was so mad when he lost that he went out, got in his car, and wrecked it. Well, that was a dumb way to complain. But that's what I would see all day long. But now I'm in the front of the boat, and I'm just peacefully reading my Bible. Now, I got all this around me. There's inappropriate relationships happening all over the boat. But here I am at the front of the boat. I'm just reading the Bible. And the sun's beating down. And it becomes beautiful. And I become a man of peace. I begin to change. It changed who I was. And then winter comes. January, riding the Mississippi, in St. Louis area, winter is not a pleasant experience. But you know what the amazing thing is? God was changing me so much. He actually changed my flesh in such a way that I was not really feeling all that cold. Because I prayed, I said, God, you're going to have to warm me up. If I'm going to do this, if I'm going to separate myself from the evil of this job, I need you to help me out. And he actually warmed my body. So I had no challenge doing that. See, when you start shaping yourself to be able to love and care, you change, you become something different. Now, over time, that's just as a new Christian. I mean, as my first month or so, God began to change my heart. He said, you know what, we're going to get you off of here. I'm going to help you change. And he said, you know what, I need you to think about joining the Army. What? I hate the Army. I hate military. That's craziness. That's too predictable. I don't want any of that. So we began to change my heart on that. And then he said, you need to talk to those guys. So one at a time, I'd have opportunities. They'd be walking to the deck, and I'd go out and I'd talk to them, and I'd say, hey, how you doing? And have a conversation. And I was able to share the gospel with almost every single one of those guys over time. Don't know those seeds. I planted seeds. I might have watered some seeds. I didn't see any harvest while I was doing all that. But I was able to share the gospel in ways that were not so offensive that they shut me down. I was able to love those guys. I was able to help some of those guys realize some of their own addictions. So I got my addiction beat now. I can help you with yours. A lot of things started to take place. But God had to shape me on the front of that boat first. There was no way I could have done that without his help. So we've got to get into time of training and taking care of yourself. And then you can love your enemies. Any final thoughts that I should be thinking about as I'm writing a chapter about taking care of yourself?
I have trouble with like notes. Even if it's not 40 days, I think Luke used to fast for just like 2 days out of the week. And then also, if you're gonna do it, like you gotta wash your face, so it helps that your fasting isn't shown beyond people or two people.
Yeah, if you're fasting, don't tell everybody, hey, everybody, I'm fasting. Put a big billboard out. You want to kind of clean, like go every day ordinary. But fasting is good. And the amount of time, let the Holy Spirit tell you to fast short or long, or how to do it. There's different types of fasting. You can look through the Bible and see some of those. Daniel did a fast, and the Bible was 21 days, but he just didn't eat meat. He only drank water, so just vegetables and water. That's one form of fast. My family and I did that. Even my kids, everybody in my family did that a couple different years in a row. We did it for Lent one year, for 40 days. And you know what? That was hard. It was easier for me to do a straight fast than it was to do that.
Did you feel healthier afterwards?
I felt pretty good. The most challenging was the first day I came back, we're drinking coffee for the first time in 40 days. Whoo, that was powerful. It's like, woohoo! Wife and I were dancing around. Changed everything. But we didn't even have milk. I mean, it was just water and vegetables.
I took some advice that you gave in one of your classes about praying for your enemies. I had an issue with a person here, and for a while, and so I prayed for her, made it a point, which I had never really done, which wasn't that easy to do, but then I started doing it regularly, and then I prayed that we became friends, and we did.
Beautiful. That's exactly what you want to be happening. Because that's what this process will do. Praying for your enemies on a regular basis. But we'll get to that more when you're actually talking about Jesus interacting with his enemies. I mean, in this case, he's interacting with his ultimate enemy. And really, that is our ultimate enemy. Our ultimate enemy is nobody in this room. Satan is the only real enemy we got. All right, well, I appreciate you all giving some feedback and input. When the book all comes out, you all get to know that you were part of all of it.